Back. Oh, and it's time to start. I'm hitting the button. That's the start button.
11:01.
Welcome to the San Carlos Computer Club. I'm Scott Stimson from International Computer Solutions, and I am probably not as prepared as I should be because I've been focusing on bed and breakfast work until the last second before starting this meeting. How are you folks doing this morning? Anything right off the top we need to share?
We have another technician appointment this afternoon with our cable company.
Oh, wonderful. Does that mean you'll be sliding in and out of service with us?
No, that's at 12 o'clock our time. So he's supposed to be here in an hour. So
I was just thinking of the flakiness of your internet.
Well, that
Jim.
too.
Welcome. We're just getting started. I just pushed the button. How are you doing this morning? I hope he can hear us. So, has anybody brought any topics for today's Computer Club meeting? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at my document. I have a couple of light things there for news, and I also stuck the UTC beginner's guide video on a link here because we were talking about it last week. Let me stick this link to this document in our chat just so it's conveniently right beside us. If anybody wants to refer to it. Wow, that's taking a long time to pass. What's going on with you? Oh, okay. Wants to warn me about access. So who's got a topic for this morning?
I got a question.
Please, Jim, go right ahead.
This is an old problem, and you've dealt with it before, but somehow I can't find in my notes how we solved the problem. My laptop is no longer communicating with my printer. Its printer is an old HP J4680, I think it is, all-in-one. And
is it wireless?
the laptop is an old HP Envy laptop.
Is it a wireless printer?
Yes.
Have you changed wireless networks?
Well, coming from Mexico back to the States, yes.
So the printer would need to be, if the printer has the printer come with you, or is this
No.
No, okay.
No, this one stays here.
Okay, so if it stays there, then maybe it's do you have a printer in Mexico, I'm assuming?
That's correct.
Are they different models? Is it obvious that you're...
Yeah, one's a newer, one's an HP Laser, the other's a inkjet.
And it's very obvious that you're on this other printer when you're trying to print from your computer.
Yes, yeah, they're an either or choice.
What kind of error does it give you when it can't print?
Nothing. It just well, now that I'm thinking about it, I want to say nothing. It
should do something. Windows and Macintosh have a printer queue that will fill up if you're not successful.
Well, that's true. That's true. Actually, okay, wait a minute. It says it's... I haven't tried it in a couple of days. I'm embarrassed. Let me try that real quick, and I'll bring it up again.
Yeah, because hopefully the queue will enlighten us to what's going on. Because it sounds like if it's two different, and the reason I ask those questions in that order is because if you've done something like you're traveling with a printer and you change wireless networks, well, the printer has to make it on the new wireless network. If the printer stays, then there shouldn't be a reason that you would be on the wrong printer unless you had two different printers that are the same make and model. That becomes very confusing at times. And so you're trying to print to the one you have set up in Mexico, and it's actually the one you have set up in Colorado. And so that's another issue. But let's get the error message, because it sounds like you understand exactly what you're doing and that you're looking at the right device. And as long as I'm assuming it's on, these devices have a Wi-Fi light that typically flashes if it's not working and is a solid color if it is connected to the Wi-Fi. So that's something to check on it to see if the Wi-Fi light is either on or flashing.
Something happened and I got disconnected, Scott, so I just got back.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I don't know what you might have said in the interim.
Well, I was just reiterating why I would have asked you those questions to kind of cut through the diagnosis. And it sounds very clearly that you know that you're connecting to that particular printer on this particular network. All that sounds good. Basically, it doesn't sound like a user error. What was I going to say? The printer hasn't moved from your Wi-Fi network, so the moment you connect to the same Wi-Fi network, it should be available to you. After that, it becomes an issue of drivers, the printer being on. We should make sure that the printer is connected to the Wi-Fi. That's what I was saying. Is these printers typically have a Wi-Fi light on them, and so that would be a solid color if it's been connected.
I know what you're talking about. Let me look.
Yeah, a flashing color if it's trying to connect to a Wi-Fi but unsuccessful. And it should be off if the Wi-Fi's been turned off.
Guess what? It's off.
It's off. So typically there's a button there right next to the Wi-Fi. You can turn it on just by pressing, just tapping it.
Okay, it's not turning on.
It should start flashing.
All right, I'm going to shut that down and try starting it up again.
Yeah. And if that doesn't immediately work, you might try shutting it down again correctly and then unplugging it. And then holding a power button while it's unplugged to make sure it dissipates all the extra electricity that's on the board. You know, like that 10-second count of just being disconnected.
Right.
And then plug it back in, give it a second after it's plugged in, and then press the power button. Some of these printers are really finicky about stuff like that.
Okay.
Good morning, Boo. Good morning, Boo.
Boo is saying hello.
Pardon me, you might hear me cough a few times this meeting. I have had this persistent cough for a while now, and it's decided to come back and be more persistent this morning.
Okay, I have just shut the thing down and started it back up. The Wi-Fi button is still, it's turned off, and when I press the button, nothing happens.
It doesn't start blinking.
No.
Wow.
And actually, if I press it, the little window dialog box says busy.
When you press the Wi-Fi button, that's a Google search. Hold on a second. It's
okay, now it's not. So that must have had something. Well, there it is.
I hear beeps.
Yep.
I just realized Emily is not going to her camp today, and I'm supposed to call them. Yuya. Hey guys, I'm going to mute myself for a moment. Yeah, I forgot I'm supposed to make this phone call. It was the one last thing I was supposed to finish before we started this meeting.
Okay.
Entertain yourselves. I'll be right back.
Carl, I missed out on what's happening with you and your internet.
Oh, no, Fred. I guess it was last Monday. We were in the middle of a huge thunderstorm that took out our cable. Only it went down the cable and it took out anything that was connected to it. So internet, TV, modem, telephone, everything was fried.
Fried, like need to be replaced, fried.
Yes, fried like needs to be replaced, will not turn on. We were gifted a telephone base, so we have our telephone up and running again. The television has been ordered on Amazon Prime Day and will be delivered on Friday. So meanwhile, we've got our cable hooked up to a screen, not much bigger than my laptop, a TV. So, but
and the
it's getting
Cheryl, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just gonna color your story with some anecdotes about how the unfortunate thing is that you had surge protection. It just wasn't on the cable line.
No, and I don't.
Such a thing exists. You can go out and purposely buy surge protectors that have cable in and cable outs on them, so that it would protect you from a cable surge. But it's not the thing people, I mean, I'm sure you're thinking about it now, but people don't typically think of that. There's cable installed all over the place without surge protectors on it.
Shouldn't our cable company have something like that? Like, you'd think it took out 3 pieces of their equipment.
So I agree with you. And at the same time, the phone company has the same concern and responsibility, and they never provide a surge protector for their phone lines. And if it's their equipment that they blew out, they just replace it. Yeah. If it's yours, well, you got to replace it.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are at. The cable company replaced the modem, and they replaced their cable box. Well, that's what he's supposed to be doing today, the cable box and the telephone router. But what we had plugged into those things, we have to replace ourselves.
So I'll tell you the same thing that I've told many San Carlos residents is that if you get struck by lightning through the phone line, and in your case in the cable line, but again, I've never felt like I had to push cable surge protectors. If a lightning strike happens, you're going to be at the mercy of Telmex to get you going again.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have it on a surge protector, the surge protector will blow, but your equipment won't, meaning you will have protected the Telmex DSL router. And consequently, you are still online, not having to report a problem, not having to wait for a technician. And so I always liked having phone line protectors with my customers because it's one less headache for them. They can call me.
Have an awesome AT&T data plan and phone, so we were able to get a hold, like we weren't toast,
sure.
But I don't have a hotspot on my phone, so we were on 4-inch screens for
and I'm just using it as an analog to your experience because it's exactly the same thing. If you had paid the $17 to $25 for a cable line protector and you had that set up, it would have protected their cable equipment and consequently your equipment that was connected to it. And your cable line protector would be burned out, so you'd have to buy a new one of those. But you could bypass it and be back online without having to deal with the cable company at all.
Yeah. And but it was, it was going to be it was going to be 12 days before a technician could be here or anything. But they gave me that appointment, and I immediately went on, like, I got the text message that said, confirm this appointment or change it. And I changed it to the next day. So I was lucky enough to get it within, about 36 hours. But otherwise, it would have been 10 days that we were without everything, telephone, internet, and all of our smart devices, our furnace, our lights, everything that's connected to it, our vacuum cleaner, like all of these things. So,
Yes.
surge protection might like to make a case that it should be the cable company that has it.
I agree. But they never have, and the phone company never has, but they absolutely guarantee their service and their equipment. So if it does blow out, they're not charging you for their modem, they're just replacing it.
Yeah.
But all your equipment, that's your responsibility.
Yeah. The phone company and the cable company are the same thing in our case.
Well, and consequently, it's the exact same situation.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm telling you is that's always been a question in the hands of the customer. The services that I've worked with Megacable, Telmex here in Alaska, and GCI, never have I seen any of these. Well, in ACS, I've never seen these organizations provide that kind of protection on your side of their connection.
Yeah.
They've always guaranteed their equipment. Like some of these services at different times, you've had to rent their equipment or you've had to purchase their equipment. And if they jolted out because of a surge, they would replace that equipment at no charge. But your personal equipment, they've never taken responsibility for. And that downtime, to me, the downtime is the big thing.
They credited me 3 days of service. So our bill was $158 a month, and they took it and divided it by 30 and gave me, 3 times that. Because I got $14 credit.
And what I was going to get into with the downtime is that if you were a business and you were my customer, I wouldn't let you operate without surge protection because we can't afford a downtime more than a few hours. And that's as much time as it takes to call an IT guy and have them take out the old surge protector that's blowing and reconnect without or with a new surge protector and keep running. Well, that's a horrible reminder that these things still happen. We normally think of them as happening in Mexico more frequently than anywhere else, but obviously in Canada it can happen. To share my experience with it, we went through a couple of power outs here in Anchorage just recently, and I noticed that I had no power at my Ring doorbell, and I was watching the battery die day by day, getting lower and lower, while I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get electricity to that. And I'm doing all the typical stuff without having to do the hard work. I'm checking the circuit breaker box. I'm checking the light. I'm just assuming that the whole circuit is out. But I can't get it to work, and I'm finally able to prove that's not the case. So I have to tear apart our whole installation to find that the USB charger that I have plugged into the doorbell, and it's a complicated installation. We have a weather box on the outside of the house that a motion sensor light is attached to, with a conduit that runs down to the smart doorbell, because we did not have power where we needed the smart doorbell. And so it's quite a complicated arrangement. In the box is an outlet, like your standard 120 volt outlet, and in there I have a USB charger, and that cable runs down to the doorbell, and it keeps the doorbell charged all the time. Well, I think these power outages took out, we don't have a surge protector on it, it wouldn't fit in the box, and it took out the USB charger. And so my brother-in-law and I had to pull the whole thing apart and recable a new USB charger into our doorbell. Fortunately, that's the only thing I found that's blowing. And it's one of the few things around here that we don't have on surge protectors. But it's an ugly reminder that surges still happen. You should have protection. I thought I saw Judy trying to get my attention. Wait, Judy, did you have something you wanted to add? Or maybe she was just saying I have to leave for a moment. We don't see your video or hear you because you're muted, so I'm assuming that you're either not hearing me because you've had to run off, or you're having an issue. Jim, I thought I heard a printer printing. Is it working?
Wrong assumption.
Wrong assumption.
I just had you muted and turned off my computer or my video. I was
Okay.
just going to say to Cheryl, I would not let it go. I would say, since it took out all their equipment, and I don't know, I just would keep pushing that one. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, Judy, rest assured I am, because this is pretty ridiculous. For 3 different technician calls in the past 5 years, they've been telling us you really need a protection box over the outside connection, like the external where it comes out of the ground and into the house. And it's been exposed to the elements. And, you mentioned that to them now, and no, that doesn't have anything to do with it, I'm sure. Well, maybe your past mistakes do have something to do with it, and we need some more reimbursement. So that's one of my calls this week.
Is there, Cheryl, is there any of your personal equipment that burned out?
Our television,
Your
$400
television set.
later.
Yeah. So
And our phone.
Your personal phone, not the modem, but the phone that it plugs into burned out.
Yeah, the modem was theirs. The personal phone base, like we have, 4 of them around the house. The base was plugged in directly to the cable or the telephone line, and it was fried.
If you've got the patience for it, I agree with Judy. It seems like they should be responsible for those devices.
Yeah, well, it means getting past the bot to get to a real person. And they do have a department called their loyalty department. And I've often spoken to them in the last, 20 years and had them reimburse me for some things. And the other side of it is our local telephone company, it's called Tequilas. Tequilas has just put a fiber optics line down our range road, which is like we live in a subdivision, so it's on the edge of the subdivision. And so I have other options, and we also have Starlink in the area, so the competition thing might get me something too.
One of the beauties of a fiber optic link is you can't get a power surge through it.
Well, we supposedly are paying for fiber optics, but you know what? The fiber optics only comes to a point further back, and this has happened from the pole to our house.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. If you have fiber installed into the house, then you can't get surged by it. But all that. So what that would mean, if there's fiber to the pole and then the pole to your house is copper, that means that pole was hit by lightning.
That's what we're not sure where the hit was, or even if it was just proximity. I don't know. Bill was talking about that, but
sure, yeah. I mean, that's why they tell you don't stand under a tree.
Yeah.
Because you're that works as a lightning rod, and then you're right next to it. You're an easy thing to be a path to the ground.
We have the mesh system as well, and that caused a whole kind of different scenario things to happen. But the mesh is plugged into the router. The router was totally fried. They replaced the router, and the mesh kept its old password and all this kind of stuff. The router came in with a new IP and a new password, but the mesh just started up again, no problem.
Yeah, and that's the way you want your things configured, so that you could pull off that internet connection and put any other internet connection on it, and everything stays the same in your world. It's one of the advantages that you have when you start working with with 2 or more internet connections and a load balancing router. The idea is that you've got these different internet connections coming in, and they plug into your network, in this case the mesh, and then the mesh doesn't care what internet you're using. That load balancing router's making that decision for it. as far as it's concerned, it's just getting internet. Kind of like hooking up a hose. It's just getting water. It doesn't care where the water came from.
You know, you use the expression, you want everything in your world the same. Oh, 4 months ago, my financial advisor advised me that he was changing company. So we're dealing with all of these. Do we stay with him? Do we go with a different company? What do we do? Next thing I hear, my insurance company is no longer the insurance broker that I thought was. It's now switched to something else. My bank sent me a message the other day saying that we are being merged with a different one and everything's going to be changing. My credit card is no longer working with, and I will be getting a new one. I have about 7 things that I have to reset all of my logins, learn new web pages, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm too old to do this, and just leave my stuff alone. So,
well, what is it they say? The one consistency in life is change.
Yeah.
Get used to it. Hi, Linda. We didn't give you a welcome. You popped in Chester, too. It's good to see you guys. Well, welcome. Have you guys brought some topics for us? You got any questions or topics, Linda? No? Nothing you're curious about? Did you guys watch the Microsoft Activision acquisition be approved by the FTC? I know, I'm a nerd. You guys aren't paying any attention to that stuff. Did you know that there was this big to-do about Microsoft trying to purchase the video game company publisher Activision? I can't think of a reason any of you would know it, except maybe some of you older nerds that like war games, because they are the company that make the Call of Duty video game that gets so much play, either for being violent or being too realistic. Call of Duty was actually in the news, I'm remembering now, years ago, for portraying some atrocities in Russia that Russia had trouble with. They didn't appreciate. In China, it was China. It wasn't Russia. It was China. And so they had to come to some mutual agreement of how that content would differ in the Chinese market. Something like that. It was something like that. But that Call of Duty was in the news. Of it for a while there. I'm aware of it because I'm an avid player of the game. It is considered one of the biggest assets of the Activision. If you're not familiar with Activision's been around since the mid-70s. They're one of the video game publishers. I guess publishers, right? That has driven the video game industry almost from the beginning. They made games for Atari and Nintendo, as well as for the PlayStation. And it was Sony that has recently they've been trying to block Microsoft's purchase of this developer studio. That's the word I was looking for, studio. They're a video game studio. And it's been really interesting because the FTC has been on Sony's side in this matter. They have made this case against Microsoft buying Activision, and many experts in the field think it's one of the few times that it doesn't make sense to be blocking this merger, this kind of large merger. And there are very few people, specifically, there are very few countries opposed to this merger, except for the United States and England. And just recently, it's been approved in the United States. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the UK deals with it, because they have not approved this deal. It's a multinational deal that has to be considered. And so they either at this point have to approve it, or I think Microsoft would be looking at blocking content in the UK so that they could be compliant with the UK regulation. The reason that it's most of the experts in this area that pay attention to this kind of stuff think it's a non-issue, is because Microsoft can't dominate this market, at least not at the moment, and that's Sony's biggest grievance, and it's a grievance the FTC has brought up, is that it's another merger of monopolies, and it will hurt consumer choice. The new, and on the surface, we typically think that is the case. I mean, you take a Pepsi and they look to purchase a Mountain Dew, and all of a sudden you've made a bigger soda company, and that's not really better for all of us. In the case of Microsoft, they have a history of stealing or buying or begging for software to bring under their publisher, making them bigger and having more of a controlling interest in what consumers have access to. Google has the same kind of reputation of either creating a competing product that will kill a product that's an independent project that's coming up, somebody that doesn't have the kind of resources. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting my words, but they will build a product. Microsoft does the same thing. They'll build a product that they can't buy, so that it'll compete and kill that other product because they don't have the kind of resources those giants have. And these are all kind of practices that we should be paying attention to, because it's not necessarily creating a better environment for the consumers. You and I do not benefit when Microsoft gobbles up one more company. Many times our choices become more limited, and in the scenarios I was just describing, what they would do is just kill something. They would buy it and kill it because they thought it was a threat. This acquisition actually, though, is quite different, because Microsoft isn't the leader in these areas. They're number three, number two at best. You actually have to narrow your criteria to fit them into a place where they're number two. They don't make any money off of their Xbox sales. And so because they have given away this hardware, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create an environment where games are available across all platforms. And this is a different thing than Sony's doing. Sony is, as a video game producer, is trying to limit where they're called exclusive deals. It's kind of like when you have a movie that can only play in one particular movie theater, even though you have two other movie theater chains in your city. You have to go to that one particular one to see that movie. Exclusive on Netflix is another way to think of it, or exclusive on Prime is another way to think of it. There's nowhere else for you to go get that. And Sony has operated their video game division and their PlayStation stuff like this since the beginning. It's one of the reasons people own PlayStations, is because they have exclusive deals on it. And Sony is claiming, and this is such a projection that you see in your relationships and deals with personal people, you see where these people, and this is a corporation behaving this way. They behave this way. They assume Microsoft is going to behave this way. So they accuse Microsoft of behaving this way, and this is their fear of what's going to happen. We just got a 15-minute. I promise I will be done before 15 minutes. So what's interesting about this that's going on is that Microsoft actually is pushing an agenda where they couldn't benefit from an exclusive deal. And that's what they're saying. And to make this deal go through, they said, not only are we not looking for exclusive deals, we'll sign a contract with Sony guaranteeing, and it is Call of Duty. There are no other titles Sony's concerned about losing except Call of Duty. And they have agreed to sign a deal with Sony that they will make Call of Duty specifically available on their platform for the next 10 years. to satisfy that concern that Microsoft will take Call of Duty and make it only an Xbox game. Now, Sony does have a concern, just like a Netflix kind of model. We're having a streaming video games model that's growing right now. And so right now it's not a concern, but in the future, Microsoft may take Call of Duty and stick it on their streaming platform. It would still not be exclusive only to Microsoft. The only way Microsoft benefits is by you being able to stream those games from everywhere, from your Android phone, from your Nintendo Switch, from your PlayStation, your Sony PlayStation, also from the Xbox. The way they make money is by you playing their games, not by you buying their equipment. It actually costs them money for you to buy their equipment. So I just point this out. You've probably seen some pieces of this in the news. I didn't even bring a news article, but it's just an interesting dynamic that's happening because I'm not a Microsoft fanboy whatsoever. It's just a really interesting dynamic that's happening. There are places where Microsoft should be stopped and regulated. This video game deal just does not feel like the place. It actually feels like Sony, for some reason, or the FTC's agenda to punish large companies just for being large. It feels like there's something there, and it's not a genuine. What the FTC is supposed to be doing is protecting consumers, and that doesn't feel like that's what's going on in all this hindrance. And consequently, I guess the judge didn't feel that way either, and just recently threw out this case and has opened the path for Microsoft to continue with this acquisition. I know nobody wants to talk about video games, or maybe Fred wants to talk about video games. But that's not really what we're here for. I just thought that this is an interesting dynamic in tech, business, and government relations. I am a proponent of regulation, so I find myself on the strange side of this. It seems like regulation without reason. And that's all I have to say on that. We have another 12 minutes. See, I finished it up in 3 minutes after that. We've got 12 minutes left in this particular meeting. I'll go ahead and just open the next meeting so that it's sitting there ready for us to move over to it when it's appropriate. And if nobody has any other topics but doesn't want to listen to me ramble about video game topics, I did bring a couple of news topics I thought was going to be interesting. More on regulation and technology. Massachusetts has a law, or at least on the 11th, they Gizmodo's writing about Massachusetts putting together a proposed law to ban the sale of your cell phone location data. Did you know that, I mean, if I haven't reminded you before, all your data is up for sale. That we have no system in the United States for you to have any control over whether that information that you have provided inadvertently gets sold in a marketplace. Your data brokers are a thing. It's created a whole side business out of all this. Technology exists just to collect information on you so that it can be used for advertising. And all of that's totally legal in the United States. It's where we're seeing this split in culture in the European Union versus the United States. They are really clamping down regulation based on how the consumer is protected, and what kind of liability that these large businesses, they call them gatekeepers. They use the words gatekeepers in the European Union, how they are to affect a marketplace and how they're supposed to affect you as a consumer. And we're just not doing it in the United States. And so here is a state. Unfortunately, it's not California, but it's a state that is proposing a ban on all sales of location data. The Location Shield Act would outlaw the selling, leasing, trading, and renting of location data. This is awesome because this is where this information comes from when you hear about stalkers, people, because there is location data that's out there for sale, and a stalker can just purchase it with a click of a button. And it is all anonymized, but if you have some idea what you're looking for, it's not hard to de-anonymize any location data, especially when it's sold by date range and region. You can narrow down on specific streets and specific dates. It's not too hard to figure it out, especially if you include that data of the residents. Then you can track that data. Chester, I see your hand up, and I appreciate you wanting to contribute because I am my mouth is getting tired talking. So what do you got?
Well, my understanding is that the FBI has been purchasing this information and has recently, at least according to testimony, has stopped buying it, but they've been buying information as well.
You are absolutely right. They are one of the biggest consumers of this private, this business of selling collected data from data brokers. It's easier than doing their own investigations. That'll have to stop. That'll end up having to be part of whatever regulations come in the future. I don't see that as a bad thing, though. I don't think you do either. In this context, I think that we invest in investigative services where they actually investigate, and at the same time, we're all protected. We're all in a better position with security when our location information is private. It's private to everyone. It's private to governments and businesses. It's private to everyone. I think we all benefit from that, and I think we'd benefit from. And this is, I mean, it is my opinion, but I think we invest our tax dollars in investigative branches that have to actually investigate. They don't just buy the information. I bet when there is a regulation similar to the Privacy Protection Acts that are being passed in the European Union, I bet there will be cutouts for FBI and CIA because that's just the way we've been behaving. We've known since 2006 that the NSA had tapped into the major fiber optic lines and were just warehousing all our information that flows across the internet, encrypted or non-encrypted. Did you want to make a comment on that, Chester?
Yes, there again, the FBI has assessed information through the NSA that was 3 million inquiries, of which 1 million were illegal.
Yeah, and that's the biggest reason that we need this stuff regulated, and we need oversight for this. What I was going to get at is that facility in Utah that we have known about. It was built after we knew about them cutting into the fiber optics lines, but they are basically just siphoning off all the conversations, all of the data that's flowing across the major backbones. And before it was a surprise, and they didn't change anything, they continued to collect it. They built a big warehouse to keep all our data. And they've just pacified us. They've continued the operation. They pacified us by saying that if it's encrypted data, which the majority of things are now, they hang on to it indefinitely as a training exercise. If it's in the open, clear data, then it should disappear within 6 months. But I don't believe that's ever happened. I believe that storage is too easy, and it's much easier to just store everything. And that's what Snowden enlightened us to, was this warehouse with a Google interface of information that you could stick people's names or phone numbers in. and get all their collective activities. And this still exists and it's still available, and all that's changed is how public the access of that information ends up being. Like Chester said, the FBI used it many times, which has now been deemed as illegal or unconstitutional. There's nothing in my mind that makes me think that this information isn't still being used. And if I was in charge of a law enforcement agency, even if it couldn't be used in court, I'd still be using it to try and do investigations. I'd hope my people weren't using it on good people. I'd hope it was only being used on bad people. But that's the line that's being drawn right now in our country. Whereas in Europe, regardless of how hard it might be to do an investigation, they don't have such a system where they're just warehousing all the movements of everything that happens on the internet. That's a very United States thing happening. I'm sure it's happening in China too, right? Absolutely. We are whittling away this first meeting's time, and we have 3 minutes. Why don't we jump over to the other meeting so we can extend this call without paying for the privilege? I've got it open now, so anybody that's coming in will be allowed in immediately. Am I in the right meeting? I don't think I'm in the right meeting. Let me try this again. Yep, I'm definitely in the wrong meeting. Sorry, all those who are still out there waiting. Oh, that's an interesting amount of time this is taking to set up and be ready. There we go. Anybody already here? Nope. Anybody already here? It's just me. There's Fred.
You wouldn't let me in.
I was going to say, in case you're interested in knowing why it took so long to get into the meeting, I lied to you all. And I was sitting in my test meeting. I was not sitting in the other meeting. So I had to wait till I could get into the meeting to let you guys into it. I'm very sorry. I thought I was ready. Everything else was going so smooth. Of course I thought I was ready. Okay. How many do we have with us right now? We're missing 4 other people, right?
I'm still here.
Well, I'm not sure if Bill's coming in. I'm not sure what.
I don't see Fred. I hear Fred, but I don't see him on my screen.
Is he still in the other meeting?
Well,
Could be.
I admitted him. Oh, no, he's not in my list, but I admitted him. We got Bill, Cheryl, Jim, and me. No, pardon me.
Morning, BT.
Morning, Jimmy.
Well, there's Fred.
There's Fred.
Hey, Fred.
Good morning.
There you are.
So I wanted to finish that topic with this quote from the ACLU that says, "Everyday unregulated data brokers buy and sell personal location data from apps on our cell phones revealing where we live, work, play, and more to protect our privacy, safety, access to abortion, which is an issue I should have brought up through my rant, and other essential health care. Massachusetts needs to ban this practice now by passing the Location Shield Act. I actually will probably see much more of this localized state-based regulation since access to abortions have become such a big deal that we've got attorney generals that are subpoenaing, they're subpoenaing, how do I even say that word? They're putting out subpoenas for location data on their citizens who may have traveled to another state to get an abortion. But I'm done with that unless anybody has anything they'd like to add to that topic. I've left the link in our document. I find it very hopeful.
That is optimistic.
And I brought one more topic with me from Engadget that I thought you guys would find interesting. Scientists making ibuprofen and other common painkillers from paper industrial waste. I didn't even know this was a thing. Chester has found us. Welcome, Chester. We were just switching topics unless you had anything more to add on our Massachusetts law that would ban location tracking. I was bringing up my next news topic I thought you guys would find interesting is that they have come up with a way to make painkillers, ibuprofen, from paper industrial waste. And Chester immediately has something to contribute. Go ahead, Chester.
Yeah, I was curious if we have anything to add to the inquiry I had about keyed security.
No caller.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot to digest. Hello? And I have put a link in the document that will take you to a UTC beginner's guide that someone has made that I found very helpful. Give me 1 second here. I want to bring this up. Oh, you're looking at my screen. Good. It does a really good job. Oh, do I want that there?
Did you know around the world hackers?
But it's 16 minutes of going into UTC and shows you how it works. After you've got it set up on your Windows, your Macintosh, or your phone, then you use it whenever you need two-factor authentication. And so it actually will connect through a USB port or an NFC chip. Well, as well as a FireWire, and if you want to plug it into a FireWire device. But it looks very straightforward. This is not receiving an SMS, or this is not receiving an email. This is the secondary device. So you have got your password, and then you have a device. The difference in this paradigm is Microsoft, Apple, Google, they're pushing this idea that the phone is the device. The password's in your head, and the phone is in your pocket. This is that same kind of paradigm, but this is the device. This is what's in your pocket. You carry this around with you, and you use it to authorize the phone. Use it to authorize the PC.
I'm not so much interested in the phone as I am the PC.
Sure, sure. In fact, they sell a model that is a little nub. In fact, they might show it in this video, where it can hide along the side of your laptop and you just leave it there indefinitely. So you don't even have to think about it. It's just there. But this device that you're seeing on the screen actually has this nice feature of having a button on it, so that when you need to do the YubiKey, you don't have to actually open up any piece of software on your device. You press the button and it opens up the software for you.
Well, do you have to set it up with, for example, your bank or broker or?
It does have, there's a list of services that it supports directly. So you don't have to do anything special with those services. So you'd want to check to verify that your bank is supporting it. Like I have an Alaskan credit union. There's a very good chance maybe my credit union isn't on that list. But I would imagine Bank of America absolutely is on that list. I think from what I've seen is that it's not a matter of you not being able to use it if it's not on that list. It's about the ease of using it. I think that if it's on that list, it is as easy as pressing the button or holding it up to your NFC. Whereas if it's not on that list, then you're using a piece of their software in conjunction with this device, and you're auto-filling a form from that software. That's what it looks like to me. So it's still doing its job, but whether it's supported on their list of supported services, I think what that's telling you is that it's as easy as just pressing the button and you're authorized. There's nothing else extra you have to do.
Would you mind sending out that link?
Yeah, you know what, that's what I was trying to do is I want to copy that link, copy this, and I will stick it in the, and you'll find it in that document that I sent you an email, I think it was yesterday. Oh, this isn't this is the YouTube video where he goes into it. And did I not save the other one? YubiKey actually has an interview on their website. So it'll actually ask you about your technical knowledge with such things and help you pick out the product that you want. Is it under, where was it? All products. Find the right YubiKey under products. Find the right one. There's a list here, see compatible services. And there's just a slew of them, and especially the big ones. This I'm curious about. I want to explore this more, not necessarily with LastPass. We don't recommend LastPass anymore because they're a bad steward of your private information. But the password management aspect of the YubiKey, I want to learn more about. I'm currently using Bitwarden as my password management. It's a open source, and if we get down in this list, I see it supports Bitwarden as well. This is just there's Bitwarden right there, supports it. This Keeper is also a very popular one that's considered very secure for passwords, password management. It seems like a natural fit to couple password management with a device like this. This device also, we're talking about tens of dollars. It's like $30 to $60 for your Ubico, which in itself seems like a very cheap authenticator when you're comparing it against your cell phone. Like the idea of using your cell phone as an authenticator is that everybody has one and you're always with it. But if you had to hand authentication to somebody, this is a much cheaper alternative. If I had to let my kids get into some service, I could hand this device to them. They don't need my cell phone. Businesses can order these in packs and distribute them to their employees. I hope you're still watching my screen, because this list of supported services goes on and on. And as I was scrolling through it earlier, I would make up in my head one that I would look for, and then I would find it. And so then I would make up another one I would look for, and I would find it.
Does that list the banks?
You know, let's do a search on it and just see if the banks are on there. I'm on the wrong page.
Well, the one I would be interested in is Schwab.
What did I just do? Back to the tail line. Oh, here's the search for it. Let's just see. KeyBank is in there. Schwab. No, it doesn't. Did I spell that right? SWAB?
SCH.
SCH.
SCHWAB.
No, it does not look like it's directly supported with YubiKey. That doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of a device like this. It just means that it is not.
You still
inherent.
misspelled it, Scott.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's SCHWAB.
Yeah, but you can see SC.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it would have
it's
shown
not
up.
bringing anything up.
Right.
Yeah. But again, that doesn't mean that you can't use a device like this with that service. It just means it's not as simple as pressing a button. It means that you're going to go through a few steps to take advantage of using this with one of those services that are unlisted. I definitely want to spend some more time looking at it. I spent a day looking at it after Chester brought it up, and I learned enough to know that there was more to learn about it. But I've heard about these devices for years. Ubico is not a new company. It's been doing this stuff for a while now. Chester, did you have any more questions? Did you get the link for that video from our chat? And I will.
No, I'll check later.
Well,
I did get your email, so I'll look and see.
Yeah, you can look for it in the document, and what I'll put in it as well is a link to the catalog of services. That'll get you on the website. I'm just going to stick it in here right next to the YouTube video. And going back to the scientists making ibuprofen, I thought this was a pretty interesting way to deal with paper waste. I had never heard of this before.
If I remember correctly, wasn't the first aspirin the underbarks on a birch tree?
Yeah, I think that's true, right? I mean, I'm not a chemist, so I don't know much of that, but it does feel like that's how they came up with aspirin.
Scott.
Yeah.
I believe it was a willow bark of some kind that the natives used to use, and that's the start of aspirin.
And so then we, as chemical engineers, isolated the properties that actually create the pain relief, and then came up with a way to generate those chemicals without the birch or the willow tree. And that's essentially what's happening here, right? But instead of starting with with I don't even know the language to talk about, but in addition to being more sustainable. So this is a whole idea of taking byproducts of some process that is a some kind of sludge. I'm at a loss for the words for it. The byproducts of producing paper can be utilized to create medications. And as long as this is approved and seen as being a safe way to do it, this will eliminate some of that byproduct and make more available some of these rare chemicals that are needed for making these medications. So it's kind of a synergistic way of dealing with the creation of medication and the disposal of paper byproducts. I like the idea. In my mind, when I was reading this, immediately flashed to the whole vaccine discussion that was taking place for years about autism, and then got really ramped up during COVID with the there was a time when I had all this vocabulary in my brain, and now I don't. The adjunct, is that the correct term? Adjunct, that the chemicals that would be added to a vaccine so that it would induce a natural reaction from your body and build up the antibodies, because they were using mercury and they were using formaldehyde in these as an adjunct to, so they would take the vaccine and then they would spread it out and add the adjunct would allow you to spread it out, and it would help invoke this immune response. Those are the words I was looking for. And people had a lot of trouble with it. We went through a period of time where vaccines without adjunct could be made available, and people were buying those. And it brought up all those memories as I was reading this article about creating ibuprofen out of turpentine. But this is specifically, drug companies need to reduce their carbon emissions for the health of the planet. And this piece right at the beginning is stuff that I didn't realize, was that the pharma market is 13% more polluting than the automotive sector when it comes to creating medication.
Whoa.
I just found that to be an eye-opening number, especially as we watch the automotive industry changing their carbon footprint. We should be seeing it everywhere, and the pharmaceutical companies are no different. They're a big deal, and if they're bigger than the automotive sector with pollution, then we are looking for creative ideas like this that could reduce contaminants. Anyway, I thought you guys would find that interesting, and I have exhausted all the topics that I have come to this meeting with.
And I have to get out of here, so I'm going to say goodbye.
All right, Jim. We'll see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
I think the only other thing I could add is I brought a movie recommendation that you and I watched last night. Bird Box Barcelona. Did anybody see the first Bird Box? This is the Sandra Bullock Netflix that was kind of spun off from the idea of The Quiet Place. You know, we went through that period of time where Quiet Place was so popular, the movie where you couldn't say a word or the aliens would get you. Then we've got an alien movie where if you saw them, they would get you. Bird Box was that movie where the actors were wandering around the wilderness with blindfolds on. Otherwise, they would kill themselves because the aliens saw them. It was kind of far-fetched.
You think?
It was popular. It was an interesting story, but it was a bit far-fetched, and not a lot of questions were answered about what was going on. We watched this movie. This is a Netflix movie. It is definitely the same universe, and it's based in Spain, so there's a lot of subtitles to read. It's done in Spanish, which is really interesting because, you know, those of us that have some Spanish in the background, we're listening to this story in Spanish, but still reading subtitles in English. But what it did was it answered some of the questions of how this works. It gave some origin story, so we got to see some of the effects of what happened at the beginning. Whereas the original Bird Box, you were just dumped in the middle of this adventure and you were trying to sort out what was going on. This, you're dumped into what's going on, and you sort it out by flashbacks to how it began and some of the things they tried to do, and scientists explaining why this is the way it is. And so I found it very, very entertaining, a good compliment to the first movie if you ever watched the first movie.
I never watched the first movie. I didn't realize that's what it was about. Isn't there another one? It's Sandra Bullock.
It's Sandra Bullock.
And something about a box.
Well, essentially, the birds in the first movie were what would give indicators of threats. And so they had no eyesight. Otherwise, they were exposed and in danger. And they would carry birds around with them to make it clear to them when they were in danger. It made me want to go back and rewatch the first movie. I might still do that. I don't think it was ever one of my recommendations, though. Whereas A Quiet Place is definitely a recommendation. That was an excellent movie.
What's that one about?
Well, that's the one done by John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, where they it's another one where you're dumped into the middle of the story, and they have children, they have a deaf child, and they're all operating in this dystopian future where the one goal is to not make a sound. Just any sound would draw the attention of these alien invaders that immediately would eviscerate anything they came across. And so this story starts months after the invasion, where this family has learned how to survive by keeping their mouths shut, and they have the added issue of having a deaf daughter. So she has had to learn how to stay quiet while not being able to hear the noise that she makes. So, no, a fascinating film. It's one of the scariest movies you'll see that doesn't utter a word, because like 90% of the movie is in silence. A Quiet Place, and then they made a sequel to that, which was just as good, I think, as the first movie. However, it wasn't a surprise, whereas the first movie was really a surprise. It was one of the things that just really pushed it into being so popular. Was nobody had ever done a movie like that before, where it wasn't based on the gore, it was based on the suspense. And it was made so much more thrilling because you heard nothing, because it was all being done in silence. If you were to watch it, Cheryl, I recommend a quiet room with the lights out to get the full effect. We saw it in the movie theater, and it made you squirm in your seat.
Okay. Well, I think our Shaw guy is here, or Rogers, or Shaw, or whatever they're calling themselves this week. So
good luck
better
with
go.
that.
Okay.
Your internet seems to be working great, so that's not a problem anymore.
Yeah, this morning was okay, even with all the rain.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
We'll see you next Tuesday. Tack on. Bill, we'll talk to you later. We'll see you next week. Fred's out of here. We'll see you next week.
Fred's here.
Tech
We'll
on,
see you next
Fred.
week. Have a
We'll
good
see you
one.
next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was it. We did it again. That was our Tuesday meeting. We meet every Tuesday at 10 Arizona Sonoran time. That's, for those of you who don't know, that's mountain time that does not recognize daylight savings. And if you're looking for computer support anywhere there out on the internet, we offer solutions through International Computer Solutions. So you can contact me directly, scott@internationalcs.net. And if you like what we've done with the Computer Club, check out our website, scclub.org. We're on Twitter as well as Tumblr. We have a Facebook page. Just do a search for the San Carlos Computer Club. Until next Tuesday, everyone's welcome to join us next week. Tech on.